It was just another ordinary Thursday morning at Oak Ridge Middle School. The kind of morning where everything seems predictable. The hallways echoed with the sound of lockers slamming shut, kids rushing to their next class, teachers with coffee cups in hand trying to stay ahead of the chaos. I was doing my usual rounds, keeping an eye on the students and making sure everything was running smoothly. I had been assigned to the school for Safety Week, one of those regular VY sits where we bring the K9S in to show the kids what we do. The goal was simple: teach the students about drug prevention and make sure they understood the importance of staying safe. Nothing too complicated, just the usual talk, with a dog demonstration on how we can detect contraband. I'd done it hundreds of times. But that morning, everything changed. And it wasn't because of what I expected. Something far stranger was about to unfold. I'd worked with my partner, Duke, for over 4 years. He was a seasoned K9 with an almost supernatural sense of detection, a black German shepherd with eyes that seemed to see right through you. We'd been on plenty of calls together, sniffing out drugs, tracking suspects, and even helping with search and rescue missions. But this was different. As we walked into the main hall of Oak Ridge, the usual crowd of students and staff were hustling about, but there was a sense of something just out of place. Nothing huge, just a feeling. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Duke's posture, though, told me something was wrong. We started the morning with a routine sweep, moving through the hallways, checking the areas where students hung out, behind the lockers, in the bathrooms. Duke worked methodically, his nose twitching as he scanned the air. Everything was normal, but there was a shift in the energy. It wasn't until we reached the art wing that things took a turn. The art wing had always been a peaceful space, bright colors, painted murals, a place where students could get creative. I'd seen those murals dozens of times, and they always made me smile. They were reminders of what we were here to protect, kids' futures. But this time, Duke's attention was immediately drawn to one mural. It was a large, intricate painting that stretched across an entire wall, depicting a fantasy forest with rabbits, birds, and other animals. It was a beautiful piece, clearly made with love and passion by the students. But as we got closer, I noticed Duke's behavior shift. His ears shot forward, his body tense. He stopped moving, frozen in place. His nose was working overtime, sniffing the air with an intensity I'd never seen before. He'd been trained to detect narcotics, explosives, anything dangerous really, but this was different. Something about this mural had caught his attention, and it wasn't a scent he recognized. "Duke, what is it?" I whispered, watching him carefully. He looked back at me, his gaze intense, as if he was trying to tell me something. Then, without any warning, Duke lunged forward, his claws digging into the wall where the mural met the drywall. The sound of him tearing through the painting echoed through the hall. Students started gathering around, confused by the noise. The mural, once pristine, was now ripped open, the plywood behind it exposed. "Duke!" "No," I shouted, pulling on his leash, but it was no use. He wasn't listening. He was on a mission. I grabbed his harness, trying to control him, but he was too focused. The more he tore, the more he exposed until I saw it. Behind the painted plywood, something was tucked away, a package wrapped in plastic, sealed with care. It wasn't just any package, it was wrapped like something you would see in a professional operation. By now, Mrs. Johnson, the art teacher, had come out of her classroom, and her eyes widened in shock when she saw what was happening. "What's going on?" she asked, looking at the mess Duke had created. "Don't know," I said, trying to regain control over Duke. He's never acted like this before. Something's got him spooked. But I didn't need to say more. As the mural continued to tear away, I could see what was hidden behind it: a bag of pills. Not candy, not aspirin, but something far more dangerous. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't a student prank. This was part of something much bigger. I could feel the blood drain from my face as I crouched down, carefully inspecting the package. It was vacuum sealed, professionally wrapped, with no markings except for a small red sticker with a V on it. "Mrs. Johnson," I said, my voice steady but urgent, "I need you to get your students back into the classroom. Now, close the door." Her face turned pale as she saw the package. "What is that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm not sure yet, but we need to keep this quiet. Go inside, please. I'll handle this." As she ushered the students back into the classroom, I turned back to Duke. He was still on high alert, his nose twitching, as if the danger wasn't over. Something about this packagite didn't sit right with me. I carefully picked it up, using my gloves, trying not to contaminate any EVY dengue. That's when my radio crackled to life. Unit 3, we have a report of an overdose at Lincoln High. 17-year-old female, unknown substance. Requesting K-9 assistance for substance identification. I felt a chill run down my spine. 2 schools, 2 separate incidents, and now this package in my hands. Something was going on here, and it was bigger than we could have imagined. Principal de VYS arrived moments later, his face ashen. He took one look at the scene and the bag in my hands, and his expression shifted to one of concern. "We need to seal this area off," I said calmly, but I could feel the weight of the situation pressing on me. "And I need to know who had access to this wall during construction. This isn't random. Someone knew what they were doing." As I continued to investigate, I realized that this wasn't just a random stash of drugs hidden away in the school. This was a carefully orchestrated plan hidden in plain sight. The drugs weren't just intended for random students. They were intended for a specific group: the high achievers, the overachievers, the ones under so much pressure to succeed that they would do anything to get ahead. Duke and I spent the next few hours carefully searching every corner of the art wing. As we moved through the building, we found 4 more hidden packages in the walls of recently renovated classrooms. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a well-thought-out network targeting kids, using their academic pressure as the hook. By the end of the day, we discovered something far bigger than just a local drug bust. This was an operation stretching across the district. The contractor who had been hired for the renovations was using his access to create hidden distribution points in schools. The drugs were being marketed as study aids, targeted at students struggling with academic pressures. It was smart, sick, and far more dangerous than I could have ever anticipated. As the investigation expanded, the scope of the operation became clear. The contractor, Marcus Webb, had been involved in pharmaceutical sales before. He'd learned the hard way that the legal system had caught on to his pre-VYS tactics. So he shifted his focus targeting vulnerable students instead. The more I learned, the more disgusted I became. When Webb was arrested, he didn't resist. In fact, he seemed relieved. His apartment was filled with sophisticated drug manufacturing equipment and files on hundreds of students. What's worse, we discovered that he wasn't working alone. Someone within the school district had been feeding him confidential student records, helping him choose his targets. And that insider was someone who worked in the district's student SARE VYCES. The moment I found out the identity of the insider, my stomach dropped. Dr. Sandra Phillips, the director of student SARE VYCES, had been using her access to student records to help Webb target kids. She believed she was helping them providing an alternative to the pressure-filled world of standardized testing. But in reality, she was fueling an operation that put these kids' lives at risk. When Dr. Phillips was arrested, she tried to justify her actions. "Do you have any idea what these kids are going through?" she said, tears in her eyes. "I was just helping them cope." But the truth was undeniable. She had drugged children without their consent, manipulating them for her own misguided idea of what help looked like. As the case unfolded, I couldn't help but feel a sense of deep sadness. These were kids, vulnerable kids being targeted in ways they couldn't even comprehend. But at least we'd caught it in time. Thanks to Duke, we had prevented a much larger catastrophe. A few months later, I was back at Oak Ridge Middle School for another VY sit. The art wing had been completely renovated, with new murals painted by current students. One mural, in particular, caught my eye: a German shepherd with amber eyes. Duke's portrait, drawn with incredible detail. "They wanted to paint him," Emma Martinez, an 8th grader, said shyly. "He saved us. We didn't even know we needed SAVYing, but he did." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "It's beautiful work," I said, studying the mural closely. "He really did, didn't he?" As I left the school that day, I thought about how everything had changed, how a routine school VY sit had turned into one of the most important cases of my career. And it wasn't just about stopping drugs. It was about protecting kids, about trusting my partner, and about seeing the danger that others couldn't see. Sometimes, the biggest threats hide in plain sight, disguised as something harmless. But if you're paying attention, if you're willing to trust your instincts, those threats can be stopped before they ever have the chance to do real harm. And that's exactly what Duke had done.